Gara's signature throwing knives, I've come up with 6 or 7 different ways I can pronounce that, so I'm just going to say Gara's signature glass throwing knives. Because, just go by the description. The build cost in these, Night and Extract can be a bit of a pain, but I cannot stress this enough. Even if you don't need them and there's an alert there, it is best to do them and have them for when you do need them than need them and not have them. I've stopped doing them recently because I kind of stockpiled more of these than I have other rarer resources. Not as rare resources. But 190 platinum isn't that bad either. It has 2 firing modes, full auto or semi-auto. I'm glad that auto's its kind of primary fire mode. Crit chance is better on it. Status, not so much. I will also admit, they do look pretty nice. Most of the glass effect, even though you can see the Sandana moves on Gara herself, was actually really well done. But comparing these to things like the Haiku is, well, not possible when you're throwing one at a time. You're going to have to go with the auto because they're all auto. And that seems to do less damage. Even the Prime version isn't really as good. The status on these is really nice. The fact it has that crit chance is also kind of useful. Oh, I was trying to click on the Despair and clicked something completely wrong. The Despairs, similar kind of thing. These do look like they're going to be quite possibly the best of the throwing weapons. The kunai doesn't even come close. It does have impact on them, which these don't, but that's pretty much it. There's only really the Spira that I've come across that comes close stat-wise because it has the crit, but doesn't have the status. And the Prime, again, a little bit close, but because these things only have the 2 damage, puncture and slash, they seem to do more damage. And that single fire mode is just nuts. The fact it comes with a V polarity, so you can instantly throw in Hornet Strike if I can ever find it. With its dual firing capabilities, you would think this thing was pretty decent. Its normal fire rate, with a 6 magazine, you empty pretty quickly, but it does reload fairly quickly as well. And the secondary fire, well, you basically throw 3 of them at once with multi-shot a heck of a lot more. The only real problem with this I have come across does seem to be that magazine of 6 is, I want to say, way too low, because after actually using these things against anything, that single fire mode, the full auto, just the normal fire mode, is actually quite impressive. It wasn't until I got onto the 4th bounty on the plains of Eidolon I had major issues with it, because it started suffering a bit. It still worked, it was just not as effective as it was for enemies basically sub-level 40 to 50. Which was a bit of a shame, and it was the 5th bounty I was doing, not the 4th. The secondary mode, the semi-auto that throws 3 at once because it uses 3 rounds from the magazine, you could throw this twice, and it does explain why things like puncture go from 30.8 to 92.4, because it's 3 times the damage. Adding barrel diffusion and lethal torrent obviously increase the amount that you throw, but it will still take half your magazine capacity to throw it, which is a bit of a shame. That's the main reason that the firing mode for this was kind of... The firing mode is fine, it's just the magazine is way too short, too small. I did toy with the idea of throwing primed slip magazine, which adds plus 55% magazine capacity, and Ice Storm in here, which adds another 40% magazine capacity. That will give you 12 rounds, which is a vast improvement, but if you take Ice Storm off, it drops to 9, and those 3 extra rounds for something like primed slip magazine it's a 14-point mod. So building this thing is actually a huge problem. I threw in the basics: Hornet Strike, Barrel Diffusion, Pistol Pestilence, Jolt. Pistol Pestilence and Jolt can of course be swapped out for any dual stat mod. Primed Pistol Gambit and primed Target Cracker to increase the crit, get onto that in a moment. Hydraulic Crosshairs, and of course Lethal Turret. Lethal Turret increasing the attack speed, and of course multi-shot as well as Barrel Diffusion. The reason I built this thing for crit and technically status using the plus 60% elemental and plus 60% status chance, the mods I have as Pistol Pestilence and Jolt for corrosive, was simply because it took the status to 91.7 for its semi-auto and 89.3 for its full auto, which was actually quite impressive. The reason I have primed Pistol Gambit and of course primed Target Cracker is because in full auto, which is what I preferred using because I prefer aiming than throwing 3 at once, it was 66.0% crit chance with a 3.2 times multiplier, and of course Hydraulic Crosshairs does increase the crit chance when you land a headshot, so that 66 goes up. In its single fire mode, yeah, that has absolutely no crit. These mods do nothing for it, but it does do the extra status over the normal one. So I did go kind of crit status build on this, which is kind of weird because I prefer going for one or the other. I would love to say this has become my favourite throwing weapon. As I said before, you should never throw glass at people, but this was actually quite impressive despite its major downsides. It was a pretty effective weapon. Its downsides were really countered fairly well by its full auto having a fairly large amount of crit to it and a fairly effective status, and the fact that it didn't need anything really special apart from those 2 Night and Extract to build did make it a fairly useful weapon to get a hold of. And also fairly useful to throw. Throwing weapons can have some insane attack speed to them, or fire speed to them. Anyway, we'll leave this off here for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch yous next time.